The spring of 1887 arrived with gentle rain across the endless valleys of Cedar Ridge. The rolling hills turned green once again, and colorful wildflowers covered the open fields like a painted blanket. Every morning the sound of birds echoed across the quiet ranches, while warm sunlight slowly melted the last traces of winter. The people believed the difficult season had finally passed and brighter days were waiting beyond the horizon. At the largest ranch in the valley lived Amelia Carter, the only daughter of the wealthy ranch owner Henry Carter. She was admired for her kindness more than her beauty. Unlike many wealthy families, Amelia spent her days helping injured animals, bringing food to struggling neighbors, and riding alone through the peaceful countryside. Her father often warned her that kindness could become a weakness, but Amelia believed every stranger deserved compassion before judgment. Late one afternoon, dark clouds gathered without warning. A violent storm rolled across the valley, bringing heavy rain and powerful winds. Amelia guided her horse toward home when she noticed something beneath an old willow tree near the riverbank. A young man lay unconscious in the mud. His clothes were torn, his hands were covered with blood, and a deep wound stretched across his shoulder. Beside him rested a broken leather saddle and a silver pocket watch engraved with the initials J.D. Amelia quickly climbed down from her horse and carefully lifted the stranger's head. His breathing was weak but steady. He looked like a cowboy, yet there was something different about him. His face carried both strength and sadness, as though he had spent years running from a life he could never escape. Without thinking twice, Amelia helped him onto her horse and began the long journey back to the Carter Ranch. Far away across the valley, 3 armed riders stopped beside the willow tree. One of them picked up the broken pocket watch and smiled coldly. "Find him before sunrise. No matter who tries to protect him, he must never reach another dawn." Morning sunlight broke through the storm clouds and filled the Carter Ranch with fresh golden light. Birds returned to the trees as if the terrible night had never happened. Yet inside the large farmhouse, silence covered every room. Amelia sat beside the injured stranger while an old doctor carefully cleaned the deep wound across his shoulder. The doctor finally stood and smiled softly. "He is fortunate. Another hour in that storm would have ended his life." The stranger slowly opened his eyes. His first glance searched every corner of the room before. Resting on Amelia, fear and confusion filled his face. He tried to rise, but pain forced him back onto the bed. Amelia gently asked him to remain still and offered fresh water. He accepted with quiet gratitude, but spoke only a few words. "My name is James." Amelia noticed hesitation before he answered, as though even his own name carried danger. She asked where he had come from. James looked toward the window and remained silent. After several moments, he quietly said, "Some roads are safer when forgotten." Before Amelia could ask another question, her father entered the room. Henry Carter studied the stranger with sharp, suspicious eyes. Years of protecting his ranch had taught him never to trust unknown visitors, especially wounded ones. He thanked Amelia for saving a life, but warned James that anyone hiding the truth usually carried trouble behind them. James calmly promised he would leave as soon as he recovered. He asked for nothing except a little time. Henry reluctantly agreed, although he ordered 2 ranch hands to keep watch over the property until the stranger departed. That evening, Amelia walked outside carrying fresh bread and warm soup. She found James sitting alone beneath the wide porch watching the sunset across the valley. For the first time he smiled. It was small but genuine. Amelia realized sadness still lived behind his eyes, yet kindness remained untouched. Far beyond the ranch, the 3 armed riders reached the highest hill overlooking the Carter property. Their leader lifted a brass telescope and spotted James sitting beside Amelia. A cold smile appeared across his weathered face. At last, now the real hunt begins. The days following James' arrival at the Carter Ranch passed slowly but peacefully. The wound on his shoulder began to heal, and the workers, who had first watched him with suspicion, slowly started accepting him. James never spoke much about his past, but his actions revealed the kind of man he truly was. Every morning he helped repair fences, carried heavy supplies, and worked beside the ranch hands. Without asking for praise, Amelia noticed that he never complained. Even when pain returned, she also noticed something unusual about him. He knew things that an ordinary traveler would never know. He could read maps with incredible skill, recognize distant horse tracks, and understand the weather before the clouds changed. One evening, Amelia found James repairing an old wooden gate near the fields. She asked him where he learned so many skills. James paused and looked across the valley. "I spent many years surviving," she replied. Amelia wanted to know more, but she saw the sadness in his eyes and decided not to force him. As days passed, their friendship slowly became something deeper. Amelia found herself waiting for their conversations, and James found peace in moments he had forgotten existed. He had spent years running from danger, but now he had a reason to stop. However, peace never lasted long. One night a stranger arrived at the Carter Ranch carrying a sealed letter for Henry Carter, the ranch owner. Opened it and his expression changed immediately. The letter contained a warning about the man staying under his roof. "The stranger you are protecting is not who he claims to be." Henry looked toward the guest room where James was resting. The letter continued. "His real name is Daniel Walker, and he is connected to the most dangerous family feud in the Western Territories." Henry folded the paper with worried hands. Meanwhile, Amelia walked toward the guest room, hoping to speak with James before the night ended. But as she reached the door, she heard voices from outside. James was not alone. A hidden figure stood in the darkness, speaking quietly. "You cannot hide forever, Daniel. Your past has finally found you." Amelia froze beside the door, because for the first time she realized the stranger she saved was carrying a secret that could destroy everything her family had built. Amelia stepped back into the shadows before either man noticed her presence. Her heart raced as she watched the stranger disappear beyond the fence. James remained standing alone beneath the moonlight. His shoulders were tense and his hands were tightly closed, as though every word he had just heard carried the weight of years. The next morning, James acted as if nothing had happened. He worked beside the ranch hands, repaired broken fences, and even helped a frightened horse trapped near the river. Amelia watched him closely, hoping to find answers hidden behind his quiet smile. Yet every time their eyes met, James smiled gently, making it impossible for her to believe he was a dangerous man. Later that afternoon, Henry Carter called James into his office. The sealed letter rested on the wooden desk between them. Henry looked directly into the young man's eyes and asked one simple question. "Is your name truly James?" For a long moment, silence filled the room. Finally, the stranger lowered his head and spoke softly. "No." Henry remained calm. "Then tell me who you really are." The young man took a deep breath. "My name is Daniel Walker. Everything else written in that letter is only half the truth." Before Daniel could explain further, the sound of galloping horses echoed across the valley. One of the ranch hands burst through the front door, breathing heavily. "3 armed riders are coming this way." Henry immediately ordered every worker to secure the ranch. Amelia looked through the window and saw the same riders. She had unknowingly saved Daniel from beneath the willow tree. Their leader rode at the front, wearing a long black coat and a silver badge that had been broken in half. Daniel quietly looked toward Amelia. "I never wanted your family involved in my past." Amelia stepped closer without fear. "Then let us decide that for ourselves." For the first time since arriving at the ranch, Daniel realized he was no longer fighting alone. Outside, the riders stopped before the ranch gate. Their leader slowly removed his hat and called out across the silent fields, "Return Daniel Walker before sunset, or everyone inside this ranch will pay for hiding him." The air across Cedar Ridge became heavy with silence as the 3 armed riders waited outside the Carter Ranch. Every ranch hand stood ready beside the wooden fence while frightened horses stamped their hooves across the dusty ground. Henry Carter stepped forward with calm determination. His weathered face showed no fear, even as the leader of the riders rested one hand upon his revolver. Daniel Walker quietly walked beside Amelia. His wound had not fully healed, yet he refused to hide any innocent Family that offered him shelter deserved honesty more than protection. He looked toward Henry and spoke with quiet respect. "This fight belongs to me. Let me leave before anyone gets hurt." Henry answered without taking his eyes off the men outside the gate. "No guest leaves this ranch because of threats." The rider, wearing the broken silver badge, laughed loudly. "You always were a stubborn man, Henry Carter." Daniel immediately recognized the voice. His face became pale. "Grant Sullivan." The leader smiled coldly. "It has been a long time, Daniel." Amelia noticed the hatred burning between the two men. It was deeper than an ordinary feud. It carried the pain of broken trust and forgotten promises. Grant slowly removed an old folded paper from inside his coat and held it high. "There is a reward for Daniel Walker, dead or alive. Every ranch from here to the northern border has received the same notice." Several ranch hands looked at Daniel with surprise. Henry never moved. He simply answered, "Then your journey ends here." Grant folded the paper and placed it back inside his coat. "So be it." Without another word, the three riders turned their horses and disappeared beyond the hills. No one celebrated. Everyone understood they would return with more men. That night, Amelia found Daniel sitting alone beneath the same willow tree where she had first discovered him. She quietly sat beside him. Neither of them spoke for several moments. Finally, Daniel reached into his pocket and removed a faded photograph. It showed a smiling young woman holding the hand of a small boy. Amelia looked at him with gentle curiosity. "Who are they?" Daniel stared at the picture with sadness filling his eyes. "My wife, my son, they disappeared 3 years ago, and I have spent every day since trying to find them." The truth Amelia believed she knew had only become more complicated. The old photograph remained in Daniel's hands as the evening breeze moved gently through the branches of the willow tree. Amelia studied the faded faces with quiet sympathy. The young woman wore a warm smile while the little boy rested proudly beside his father. It was a picture filled with happiness, yet it carried the sadness of everything. Daniel had lost. Amelia carefully asked what had happened. Daniel looked toward the distant mountains before answering, 3 years ago, my family disappeared after our wagon was attacked on a lonely trail. I searched every town, every ranch, and every river crossing, but found nothing except broken tracks and silence. Everyone believed they were dead, but I never stopped believing they were alive. Somewhere someone knows the truth." Amelia placed a comforting hand upon his arm. "I believe you will find them," she said softly. Daniel smiled with gratitude. It was the first time anyone had offered hope instead of pity. The following morning, life at the Carter Ranch seemed almost normal. Ranch hands repaired barns while horses grazed across the green valley. Yet beneath the peaceful routine, everyone remained watchful, expecting Grant Sullivan to return. Henry Carter gathered several trusted men inside the stable. He ordered stronger fences, fresh supplies, and guards through every night. If trouble arrived, the ranch would be ready. Later, Amelia entered the old storage barn, searching for extra blankets. While moving an old wooden chest, she noticed fresh footprints in the dust. Someone had entered the locked building only hours earlier. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard, she discovered another folded photograph. Her heart stopped. It showed the same woman and little boy from Daniel's pocket picture. But someone else stood beside them. Grant Sullivan. Before Amelia could understand what it meant, a loud noise came from outside. She quickly hid the photograph inside her coat and stepped into the sunlight. One frightened ranch hand came, running across the yard, pointing toward the northern hills. "More riders are coming." Henry climbed onto the porch and counted nearly 20 horsemen moving across the valley. Their leader was not Grant Sullivan. An older man dressed in black rode at the front carrying a white flag. Daniel looked at the approaching stranger and whispered words that filled everyone with dread. He should have stayed dead. "Why is my father here?" Silence spread across the Carter Ranch as the line of riders came to a stop outside the front gate. Every ranch hand reached for a rifle, but no one fired. The older man, dressed in black, slowly climbed down from his horse. His gray beard moved gently in the afternoon wind while his tired eyes remained fixed on Daniel. Amelia looked at Daniel in confusion moments earlier. He had whispered that the man should have stayed dead, yet the stranger stood before them alive and unharmed. Henry Carter stepped forward and demanded to know their purpose. The old man removed his hat and spoke with a calm, respectful voice. "My name is Samuel Walker. I have not come here to fight. I have come to save my son." Daniel laughed bitterly. "You lost the right to call me your son many years ago." The painful words echoed across the silent ranch. Samuel lowered his eyes. "You have every reason to hate me, but if you do not leave with me today, every person living on this ranch will soon die. Grant Sullivan is only the beginning. Someone far more powerful has already entered Cedar Ridge." Daniel refused to move. "Every lie you ever told destroyed our family. Why should I believe you now?" Samuel slowly reached inside his coat. Every ranch hand raised a weapon, expecting trouble. Instead, he removed a small leather journal worn by time. "This belonged to your mother. She wanted you to have it when the time was right." Daniel stared at the journal. His hands trembled because he recognized the hand. Stitched cover, his mother had carried it everywhere before her. Mysterious death. Before anyone could speak, another sound rolled across the valley. A single gunshot. One of the Carter ranch guards fell from the watchtower. Panic exploded across the property. Hidden shooters had surrounded the ranch without anyone noticing. Grant Sullivan rode onto the hill above them, smiling. A smoke drifted from the rifle in his hands. He raised his voice across the valley. "You have until sunset. Hand over Daniel Walker, or this ranch becomes a graveyard." Daniel looked at Amelia, then at the journal in his father's hands. For the first time, he realized the truth about his family had only just begun. The first gunshot shattered every hope of peace across the Carter ranch. Ranch hands rushed toward their positions while frightened horses ran wildly through the open fields. Smoke drifted from the distant hillside where Grant Sullivan and his men watched with cruel patience. Every passing moment pushed the ranch closer to war. Daniel grabbed a rifle, but Samuel caught his arm. "Do not waste your anger. That is exactly what they want." Daniel pulled away. "They already started this fight." Samuel looked deeply into his son's eyes. "The men outside are not hunting you because of revenge. They are searching for something your mother left behind." Daniel looked at the worn leather journal resting in his father's hands. "What is inside?" Samuel carefully opened the first page, yellowed. Paper revealed delicate handwriting filled with dates, names, and strange symbols. None of it looked like an ordinary diary. "Your mother discovered a secret years before anyone else," Samuel whispered. "She learned that several wealthy families across the Western Territories were secretly stealing ranches from honest settlers. They forced people away through fear, lies, and murder. Every crime was recorded inside this journal." Henry Carter stepped closer. "If those records become public, powerful men would lose everything." Samuel nodded slowly. "That is why your family was destroyed." Amelia listened carefully while the weight of the truth settled upon everyone. The missing wife, the vanished child. The attacks, every tragedy was connected to the same hidden organization. Suddenly, one folded page slipped from the journal and landed upon the wooden floor. Daniel quickly picked it up. It was not a written message. It was a hand-drawn map. A red circle marked one lonely place far beyond Cedar Ridge. Whispering Pines Ranch. Henry stared at the map with growing concern. That ranch burned down almost 20 years ago. Samuel slowly shook his head. That is what everyone was told. Before anyone could speak, another explosion echoed across the valley. Flames suddenly rose from one side of the Carter barn. Hidden attackers had set the building on fire while everyone watched the front gate. Grant Sullivan laughed from the distant hill. Daniel realized the attack had only begun. Then Samuel whispered words that froze every heart inside the ranch. "Your wife and son were last seen near Whispering Pines Ranch. They may still be alive." Sleep never came to the Carter ranch that night. The burning barn filled the valley with smoke, while ranch hands struggled to save frightened horses and valuable supplies. Bright flames lit the dark sky, making every shadow appear like another hidden enemy. Grant Sullivan and his riders disappeared before dawn, leaving only destruction behind. They wanted fear to grow before returning for the final attack. Inside the farmhouse, Daniel spread the old map across the dining table. Henry, Amelia, and Samuel gathered around the faded drawing, the red circle marking. Whispering Pines Ranch seemed almost alive under the lantern light. Henry finally spoke. Everyone believed that ranch was destroyed many years ago. Samuel slowly nodded. That story was created to keep people away. The ranch still exists hidden beyond the northern canyon. Few travelers ever find the road, because false trails lead them in every direction. Daniel looked at the map with growing determination. If my wife and son were taken there, then we leave at sunrise. Amelia stepped forward without hesitation. Then I am coming with you. Henry immediately refused. The journey is too dangerous. Amelia looked directly at her father. Daniel risked everything for strangers. Before anyone knew his name, now it is our turn to stand beside him. Henry saw the same courage in his daughter that once lived in her late mother. After a long silence, he finally agreed. Before sunrise, 4 riders quietly left the Carter ranch. Daniel, Amelia, Samuel, and one trusted ranch hand named Lucas followed the hidden trail leading toward the northern canyon. Thick forest surrounded the narrow path, while steep cliffs blocked the morning light. Every sound seemed to carry danger. Hours later, they reached an abandoned wooden bridge crossing a deep river. Daniel noticed fresh horse tracks pressed into the wet ground. Someone had crossed only a short time earlier. Suddenly, Lucas raised his hand. Voices. Everyone moved behind thick trees as several armed riders appeared on the opposite side of the river. They were not Grant's men. Their jackets carried a strange black symbol shaped like a flying raven. Samuel looked terrified. We are too late. They have already found the ranch. Then the leader of the riders turned toward Daniel's hiding place and slowly smiled as though he had been expecting him all along. The stranger wearing the black raven symbol guided his horse slowly toward the river. His face remained hidden beneath the shadow of a wide black hat, yet his confident smile revealed that he already knew exactly who Daniel Walker was. The other riders spread across the trail, forming a wall between the travelers and the northern canyon. Daniel stepped out from behind the trees with calm determination. Amelia reached for his arm, but he gently shook his head. He understood that hiding was no longer possible. The mysterious leader removed his gloves and spoke in a calm voice. Welcome, Daniel, we have been waiting for you. Daniel stared at the man, trying to remember where he had seen him before. The voice sounded strangely familiar, but the years had buried the memory beneath pain and anger. Samuel whispered from behind. Do not trust anything he says. The rider smiled without looking away from Daniel. Your father always gives the same advice. That is why he never learned the truth. Henry had once told Daniel that dangerous men often carried polite voices. The stranger proved those words perfectly. The leader slowly reached inside his coat. Everyone expected him to draw a weapon instead. He revealed a small silver necklace carrying the same blue stone that Daniel's missing wife always wore. Daniel felt the world stop. Where did you get that? The rider held the necklace carefully. Your wife gave it to me. Amelia looked toward Daniel, whose hands were trembling. The rider continued. She is alive. Your son is alive. Both are waiting beyond the northern canyon, but they will only remain safe if you come with us alone. Samuel stepped forward in anger. He is lying. The rider finally looked at Samuel. If I wanted Daniel dead, he would already be dead. I came with an offer, not a threat. Daniel looked at the necklace once more. Every detail matched the one he had placed around his wife's neck on their wedding day. No stranger could have copied it. A painful choice stood before him. Stay with the people who had saved his life, or follow the only clue that might lead to his lost family. Then another voice echoed from deep inside the forest. Do not believe him, Daniel. He is the man who betrayed your wife. The mysterious voice echoed through the silent forest, causing every rider to stop at once. Even the horses became restless as the wind carried the sound between the towering pine trees. Daniel searched the shadows while Amelia stood close beside him. Her heart pounded as an unknown figure slowly stepped into the narrow trail. It was an older woman wrapped in a faded gray traveling coat. Her silver hair moved gently with the breeze, yet her eyes remained strong and fearless. She carried no rifle, no knife, and no sign of fear. Only a weathered leather satchel rested across her shoulder. The leader of the Raven Riders frowned the moment he saw her. "You should not have come here." The woman ignored him and walked directly toward Daniel. She stopped only a few steps away and studied his face with quiet sadness. "You look just like your mother." Daniel felt a strange chill run through his body. "Who are you?" The woman smiled gently. "My name is Eleanor Brooks. I was your mother's closest friend." The silver necklace still rested in the rider's hand, but Eleanor never looked at it. She looked only at Daniel. "The man standing before you speaks half the truth. Your wife is alive. Your son is alive. But they are not waiting willingly. They are prisoners." The forest became completely silent. Daniel stepped closer. "Where are they?" Eleanor slowly pointed toward the northern mountains. "Hidden beyond Whispering Pines Ranch, there is a place called Black Hollow. Few people know it exists. Those who enter without permission never return." Samuel closed his eyes, as though the name awakened an old nightmare. The Raven Rider laughed quietly. "You always enjoyed dramatic stories, Eleanor." She answered without fear. "And you always enjoyed destroying innocent families." Without warning, the rider pulled a revolver from beneath his coat. Ranch hands raised their weapons instantly. Amelia moved beside Daniel, ready for whatever came next. Before anyone fired, Eleanor reached into her satchel and removed an old folded document. She handed it to Daniel. "Your mother wanted you to have this if she could never return." Daniel slowly opened the paper. It was a family record showing something impossible. His wife carried the Carter family name before they were married. Daniel looked toward Amelia in complete disbelief. The woman he loved had been hiding a secret connected to Amelia's family all along. Held the old family record with trembling hands. Amelia stood beside him, unable to understand how her own family name appeared beside the name of Daniel's missing wife. Samuel remained silent while Eleanor slowly unfolded another faded document from inside her weathered satchel. The paper revealed a forgotten family tree stretching back more than 30 years. Every branch connected the Walker family with the Carter family through marriages, friendships, and promises made long before Daniel and Amelia were born. Henry carefully studied the names. "This cannot be true. Our families have been strangers for generations." Eleanor gently shook her head. "That is what Nathaniel Cross wanted everyone to believe. He divided families so no one would discover the truth." Daniel looked toward Amelia. "Then my wife knew about this secret." Eleanor nodded. "She learned the truth shortly before she disappeared. That is why the Raven Riders captured her. She refused to hand over the family records." Amelia slowly remembered something from her childhood. When she was very young, her mother often spoke about a place called Whispering Pines Ranch, but every conversation stopped the moment Henry entered the room. She turned toward her father. "Why did Mother always fear that place?" Henry lowered his eyes. "Because your grandfather disappeared there. We searched for months but never found him." Samuel stepped closer to the old map. Whispering Pines was never destroyed. It became the hiding place of the Raven Riders. Daniel carefully folded the family record. "Then every answer lies beyond those mountains." Without warning, Lucas pointed toward the muddy trail. Fresh horse tracks. Someone had been watching them. Daniel followed the tracks only a short distance before discovering a small silver brooch lying beside a fallen tree. His heart stopped. It belonged to his wife. Attached beneath it was a tiny folded note. Daniel opened it with shaking hands. Only 5 words were written across the paper. "I am waiting at Black Hollow." He looked toward the northern mountains. For the first time in 3 years, hope felt stronger than fear. Inside, the old family record changed everything. Daniel could no longer separate his past from the Carter family. The woman he had loved had hidden a truth that connected both families long before they ever met. Amelia remained silent as she tried to understand why no one had ever spoken about another branch of her family. Henry studied the faded document with growing concern, while Samuel looked away, carrying the weight of forgotten mistakes. Eleanor carefully folded the record and pointed toward the distant northern mountains. "Every answer now waits inside Black Hollow." Daniel looked across the endless forest. Then that is where we are going." The Raven Rider smiled calmly, as though he had expected those words. "You will never reach Black Hollow before us." Without another warning, he signaled his men, and the riders disappeared between the towering pine trees, leaving only drifting dust behind. Samuel stepped beside Daniel. "They know every trail through these mountains. If we follow the main road, they will prepare an ambush." Eleanor slowly nodded. "There is another path. Very few people still remember it. It crosses the old Eagle Pass and reaches Black Hollow from the eastern cliffs." The journey began before sunrise. Tall forests surrounded the travelers, while steep cliffs blocked the morning light. Rivers rushed through narrow valleys, and distant wolves called across the mountains. Every mile carried them farther from safety. Late that afternoon, Amelia noticed fresh footprints beside the trail. They were much smaller than the boots worn by the Raven Riders. Daniel knelt beside the tracks, a child. The footprints continued only a short distance, before suddenly disappearing near the entrance of a hidden cave. Inside the cave, they discovered a small wooden toy horse lying upon the ground. Daniel carefully picked it up. Tears filled his eyes because he recognized the carving. He had made the toy for his son on his 5th birthday. Someone had brought the child through this cave. Then Amelia found fresh writing carved into the stone wall. Daniel read the words slowly. "Keep following the river. Trust no one wearing the raven symbol. She is still alive." Then a faint voice echoed from deeper inside the darkness. "Daddy, please hurry." The tiny voice disappeared into the darkness before anyone could answer. Daniel rushed deeper inside the cave, carrying only a lantern, while Amelia, Samuel, Eleanor, and Lucas followed close behind. Cold air drifted through the narrow passage, and every sound echoed against the damp stone walls. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, creating a strange rhythm that made the silence even more unsettling. Daniel called his son's name, but only his own voice returned. He refused to stop. The wooden toy horse remained tightly in, his hand reminding him that every step brought him closer to the family he had searched for during 3 painful years. The tunnel suddenly widened into a hidden chamber. Ancient wooden crates covered one side, while broken mining tools rested beneath thick layers of dust. Someone had used this place recently. A small fire still burned near the far wall, and fresh footprints crossed the soft ground. Amelia noticed a blue ribbon lying beside the fire. Daniel recognized it immediately. His wife had worn the same ribbon on the day they were married. Hope filled his heart stronger than ever before. Eleanor slowly examined the chamber. Her expression changed when she noticed a faded symbol carved into the stone. It matched the black raven worn by the mysterious riders. "This was one of their hiding places," she whispered. Samuel carefully searched the wooden crates. Inside, he found blankets, food supplies, and several maps. One map showed Black Hollow only a few miles beyond the eastern ridge. Another page listed names of families, marked with strange symbols. Henry Carter, Walker, Brooks. Carter again. Every family connected by one secret. Before anyone understood the meaning, a frightened little boy suddenly ran from another tunnel and threw himself into Daniel's arms. "Father!" Daniel held the child tightly, unable to stop the tears running down his face. "My son." For one beautiful moment, nothing else mattered. Then Amelia looked toward the tunnel, where the boy had appeared. A young woman stood silently in the shadows. Her face carried both joy and fear. Daniel slowly lifted his eyes. It was his wife. She smiled through tears, but gently shook her head. "Do not come closer. They're already here." Behind her, dozens of footsteps echoed through the mountain as the Raven Riders entered the cave from every direction. The sound of boots striking the stone floor thundered through the cave as Raven Riders surrounded the hidden chamber from every direction. Daniel stepped in front of his wife and son without hesitation. His only thought was keeping them alive. Amelia stood beside him while Samuel, Henry, Eleanor, and Lucas raised their rifles. Every face carried fear, yet no one moved backward. The leader of the Raven Riders slowly entered through the largest tunnel. His calm smile had disappeared. Reaching the center of the chamber, he looked directly at Daniel. "Your search ends today." Daniel answered with steady determination. "No, It begins today. Without another word, the first shot echoed across. Black Hollow, the battle exploded inside the cave. Smoke filled the narrow tunnels while bullets struck stone, sending sharp fragments into the air. Ranch hands fought bravely beside, the Carter family refusing to surrender, even as more enemies entered from hidden passages. Daniel guided his wife and son behind a large wall of broken rock. Amelia covered them with careful aim, while Lucas and Henry defended the eastern tunnel Samuel stood beside. Eleanor protecting the old maps and family records that revealed the truth powerful men had hidden for decades. During the chaos, Daniel's young son pulled gently on his father's sleeve. "Father, there is another way out." Daniel looked down in surprise. The boy pointed toward a narrow crack behind several wooden crates. "Mother showed me before they captured us." Daniel quickly called everyone together. They pushed the heavy crates aside, revealing a hidden tunnel leading deeper beneath the mountain. Cold, fresh air flowed through the opening, proving it reached the outside world. The Raven leader realized what they had discovered. "Stop them. Do not let them escape." Enemies rushed forward, but Henry and Samuel held the narrow entrance, buying precious moments for the others. Daniel carried his son, while Amelia helped his injured wife through the tunnel. Eleanor protected the family record inside her satchel, because she knew the truth would destroy every man behind the Raven Riders. As Daniel reached the end of the passage, bright sunlight suddenly filled his eyes. They had escaped the cave. Then he looked across the valley below. An entire army waited outside Black Hollow, ready for war. Daniel stopped at the edge of the rocky cliff and stared across the wide valley. Below them, hundreds of armed riders waited beside rows of wagons, carrying supplies, rifles, and horses. Black banners moved with the cold mountain wind, while guards patrolled every path. Leading away from Black Hollow escape had only carried them into a greater danger. Amelia quietly counted the enemy camps. "There are far too many." Henry looked toward the narrow trail behind them. "We cannot fight an army." Daniel's wife stepped forward, holding their son's hand. Her face showed years of suffering, yet her voice remained steady. "They are waiting for someone." "Not us." Everyone turned toward her. She pointed toward the largest black tent standing at the center of the valley. "The leader has not arrived yet." "The Raven Riders never begin anything until he gives the order." Samuel looked across the valley with fear growing inside him. "If he is coming, then we have almost no time left." Eleanor carefully removed another folded page from the family record. Hidden inside was a rough drawing of the mountain valley. Several small marks formed a circle around the enemy camp. Henry studied the map. "Old mining tunnels." Eleanor nodded. "Your ancestors built them many years ago. They connect every hill surrounding this valley." Daniel immediately understood. If they reached those tunnels, they could move unseen and rescue the innocent families imprisoned inside the camp. Without warning, a trumpet echoed through the mountains. Every soldier below stood perfectly still. A long black carriage rolled slowly into the center of the camp. Pulled by 4 powerful horses, it stopped before the largest tent. The door opened. A tall man wearing an elegant black coat stepped onto the ground. His face remained hidden beneath a wide hat, but everyone around him lowered their heads with complete respect. Daniel's wife gasped softly. "No, it cannot be him." Daniel looked at her. "You know this man?" She slowly nodded while tears filled her eyes. "I trusted him more than anyone. He was the minister who blessed our wedding." The man slowly removed his hat. Daniel felt his heart stop. The respected preacher who had united his family was the true leader of the Raven Riders. Silence covered the mountain as the black carriage came to a stop in the center of the valley. Every rider lowered his head while the mysterious preacher walked slowly toward the largest tent. His calm face showed kindness to the world, yet Daniel now understood that kindness had always been another mask. Amelia looked at Daniel's wife, unable to believe what she had heard. "You are certain it is him?" She nodded without hesitation. "His name is Reverend Nathaniel Cross. Every town believed he was a man of faith. He blessed marriages, buried the dead, comforted the poor, and collected donations for families in need. No one ever questioned him." Samuel closed his eyes with deep regret, because anyone who questioned him disappeared. Daniel felt anger rising inside him. For years he had searched for the men who destroyed his family. Never once had he imagined the true enemy would hide behind prayers and promises. Eleanor carefully unfolded another page hidden inside the family record. Your mother discovered his real business many years ago. The churches were only a cover. Nathaniel secretly gathered information from every town, learning which families owned valuable land. Then the Raven Riders forced those families away and claimed everything for themselves. Henry looked across the valley. That is why so many ranches suddenly became abandoned. Eleanor nodded. Every tragedy followed the same pattern. Daniel looked toward the prisoner camp, where frightened women, children, and old settlers remained guarded behind wooden fences. We cannot leave them here. Lucas pointed toward the old mining tunnels shown on the map. Those tunnels reach beneath the camp. If we move before sunset, we can enter unseen. Everyone agreed. As darkness slowly covered the valley, the group climbed into the hidden tunnel, carrying only lanterns and quiet determination. The narrow passage twisted beneath the mountain until fresh voices echoed overhead. Daniel carefully pushed aside a loose wooden plank. He looked into the enemy camp. Only a few steps away, his son quietly whispered, "Father, someone is coming." Daniel lifted his eyes. Reverend Nathaniel Cross was standing directly above the hidden tunnel, smiling as though he had known. They were there all along. Daniel slowly lowered the wooden plank and held his breath. Every member of the group remained perfectly still. Above them, Reverend Nathaniel Cross stood silently, as though listening to the mountain itself. After several endless moments, his footsteps faded into the distance. Only then did everyone dare to breathe again. Lucas whispered that they had been fortunate, but Eleanor gently shook her head. That was no accident. He knows someone is hiding beneath the camp. Daniel understood the danger. If Nathaniel truly suspected the tunnels, their chance to rescue the prisoners would soon disappear. They had only one opportunity. The group continued crawling through the narrow passage until they reached another hidden opening. This time, they looked into a small wooden chapel standing at the center of the enemy camp. Candles burned beside a simple altar, while the room appeared peaceful, unlike the cruelty outside. Daniel's wife quietly pointed toward the altar. There, behind that wall. Daniel carefully entered the empty chapel, followed by Amelia. Samuel, Henry, Eleanor, and Lucas. The old wooden floor creaked beneath their boots, yet no guards appeared. Eleanor examined the stone wall behind the altar until her fingers found a loose brick. She pulled it free. A hidden iron lever rested inside the opening. Daniel pushed the lever downward. The altar slowly moved aside, revealing a secret staircase leading deep beneath. The chapel cold air rose from the darkness, carrying the smell of damp earth and forgotten history. Lanterns lit the narrow steps as the group descended into a vast underground chamber. Rows of wooden shelves filled the room. Every shelf held leather books, maps, land records, family documents, and countless gold coins stolen from innocent settlers. Henry stared in disbelief. This is where every stolen ranch ended. Eleanor opened one of the large books and found thousands of names. Each family had been marked with dates, showing when their land had been taken. Then Daniel noticed one final book resting alone upon a stone table. Across the cover were two words written in faded ink. Walker family. He slowly opened the first page. His face turned pale, because the truth revealed that his own grandfather had helped Nathaniel Cross build the Raven Riders before trying to destroy them. Daniel stood frozen as the old family book rested open upon the stone table. Every page revealed another piece of the past that had been hidden for generations. The first entry carried his grandfather's name, beside the signature of Reverend Nathaniel Cross. Together, they had founded the Raven Riders, believing they would protect honest settlers from violent outlaws. But everything changed only a few years later. Daniel continued reading. His grandfather discovered that Nathaniel had never wanted justice, he wanted power. The organization slowly transformed into a secret empire, stealing land, destroying families, and murdering anyone who refused to surrender. When Daniel's grandfather tried to expose the truth, Nathaniel declared him a traitor and erased his name from every public record. Samuel lowered his head. Your grandfather died trying to stop the evil he helped create. Daniel gently closed the book. Then my family has spent 3 generations paying for one mistake. Eleanor carefully gathered the family records while Amelia searched the underground chamber for anything else Nathaniel might have hidden. Behind another wooden shelf, she found a heavy iron chest, locked with an old brass key. Henry forced the lock open using a blacksmith hammer he had carried since leaving. Cedar Ridge. Inside rested hundreds of letters sent by judges, sheriffs, businessmen, and wealthy ranch owners. Every letter proved they had secretly worked with Nathaniel for many years. Lucas smiled for the first time in days. This evidence can destroy the entire network. Before anyone could answer, church bells suddenly echoed above them. Daniel looked toward the staircase. They know we are here. At once the group collected the books, maps, letters, and records. They hurried toward the hidden stairs, but stopped when they reached the chapel. Dozens of Raven Riders surrounded the building. Reverend Nathaniel Cross stood at the front holding Daniel's young son by the shoulder. The preacher smiled with frightening calm. Leave every document behind, or the boy dies before his father takes another step. Daniel looked into his son's frightened eyes. Then he slowly placed his rifle upon the wooden floor, because no truth was worth losing his child. The silence inside the chapel became heavier than the mountain above it. Daniel stared at Reverend Nathaniel Cross while his young son stood trembling beside the cruel preacher. Raven Riders surrounded every doorway with loaded rifles. Escape was impossible unless someone created a miracle. Nathaniel smiled, as though victory had already become certain. Choose wisely, Daniel. Your son or the truth. Daniel slowly raised, his empty hands showing he carried no weapon. His eyes never left the frightened child. No father should ever face such a choice. Amelia quietly stepped closer to Eleanor and whispered a simple plan. Henry, Samuel, and Lucas understood immediately without speaking. A lifetime on the frontier had taught them that courage often depended upon perfect timing rather than perfect strength. Daniel carefully placed the final family record beside his rifle. I will surrender everything. Just let my son walk to me. Nathaniel gently pushed the boy forward. Slowly, the child began walking across the wooden chapel floor. Every step felt longer than the last. Daniel's heart pounded as he fought the urge to run. When only a few feet remained, Amelia suddenly knocked over a burning lantern. Flames spread across the old wooden floor almost instantly. Thick smoke filled the chapel, causing panic among the Raven Riders. Henry and Lucas rushed toward the nearest guards while Samuel grabbed the family records. Eleanor threw another lantern into the far corner, creating even greater confusion. Daniel ran forward and lifted his son into his arms. His wife reached them moments later, and together they hurried toward the hidden staircase beneath the altar. Nathaniel shouted furious orders, but smoke covered every direction, making it impossible for his men to fire safely. The family escaped through the underground tunnel, carrying every piece of evidence that could finally expose the Raven Riders. After hours of climbing, they emerged onto a lonely mountain ridge where dawn painted the sky with golden light. Everyone believed they had escaped. Then Daniel noticed fresh horse tracks leading toward Cedar Ridge. Grant Sullivan had not been inside the chapel. He had ridden ahead during the night. Daniel looked toward the distant valley where smoke slowly rose above the horizon. The Carter ranch was burning, and Amelia whispered with fear, "My father stayed behind to protect our home." Daniel led the group down the Rocky Mountain Trail without stopping. Every minute felt precious because dark smoke continued rising from the distant valley. The Carter ranch had become more than a place of safety. It had become the home that welcomed a stranger when the world wanted him dead. Daniel refused to let that kindness be repaid with tragedy. Amelia rode ahead with tears in her eyes. Fear filled every thought as she imagined her father surrounded by enemies. Henry had remained behind with only a handful of loyal ranch hands, while the Raven Riders gathered strength across the region. Every mile seemed longer than the last. By sunset, they reached the first hill overlooking Cedar Ridge. The sight before them stole every breath. The ranch buildings were blackened by fire. Barns had collapsed into smoking ruins. Fences lay broken across the fields. Horses wandered freely through the valley, searching for familiar voices. The once peaceful home looked like the aftermath of a battlefield. Amelia jumped from her horse and ran toward the house. "Father?" No answer came. Daniel followed closely, searching every corner until Lucas called from beside the old stable. Fresh footprints covered the muddy ground. Dozens of riders had left only hours earlier. Samuel knelt beside another trail, leading toward the river. "Someone survived." These tracks belonged to Henry. Relief washed across Amelia's face, but only for a moment. Near the riverbank, Daniel found a broken silver watch half buried beneath. The mud, he recognized it instantly. It belonged to Henry Carter. Beside the watch lay a folded piece of paper held beneath a smooth stone. Daniel opened it carefully. The message contained only a few words. "Bring every document to Iron Canyon before sunrise. Come alone, or Henry Carter dies." Amelia looked toward the dark horizon, where Iron Canyon disappeared into endless cliffs. Daniel folded the message and quietly reached for his rifle. Nathaniel wanted one final bargain. This time the price was not land or money. It was the life of the man who had given a hunted stranger a second chance. Night covered the frontier as Daniel prepared for the journey to Iron Canyon. No one wanted him to ride alone, yet the message left beside. Henry's broken watch carried only one demand. Nathaniel Cross expected Daniel to arrive without help. Amelia refused to accept that condition, but Daniel gently held her hands and promised he would bring her father home. Before sunrise, Daniel left the Carter ranch carrying the family, records inside a weathered leather satchel. His horse followed the narrow trail through silent forests and empty valleys, until finally the towering walls of Iron Canyon appeared before him. The rising sun painted the red cliffs with golden light, making the lonely place appear almost peaceful. Nathaniel Cross stood waiting beside the old canyon bridge. Dressed in black as always, he showed no sign of fear. Around him, several Raven Riders guarded the entrance, while Henry Carter knelt nearby, with his hands tied but still proud and unbroken. Nathaniel smiled as Daniel approached. "You kept your promise." Daniel climbed down from his horse. "Release Henry." Nathaniel calmly shook his head. "First, the records." Daniel removed the satchel but did not hand it over. "These papers belong to every family you destroyed." Nathaniel laughed softly. "History belongs to whoever survives." Before Daniel could answer, another voice echoed across the canyon. "That ends today." Everyone turned toward the cliffs. Above them, dozens of riders appeared carrying the flags of neighboring ranches. Sheriffs, honest settlers and families once driven from their homes had answered Eleanor calls for help. They had gathered through the night after learning the truth hidden inside the family records. Nathaniel's calm expression finally disappeared. He had expected one man. Instead, he faced an entire frontier united against him. The Raven Riders hesitated as more riders surrounded the canyon from every direction. Escape became impossible. Nathaniel slowly stepped behind Henry and raised a revolver against his head. "One more step and he dies." Daniel looked across the canyon, then toward Amelia, who had secretly followed with Eleanor Samuel. Lucas and his rescued family. No one moved. The future of every innocent family rested upon the next heartbeat. Then a single gunshot shattered the morning silence. The gunshot echoed across Iron Canyon, and every rider reached for a weapon. Thick clouds of dust rose from the rocky ground as frightened horses reared into the air. Daniel looked toward Henry Carter, expecting the worst, but the bullet had struck the revolver in Nathaniel Cross' hand, sending it spinning across the canyon floor. Henry broke free and rolled behind a large boulder. While the Raven Riders scrambled in confusion, Amelia lowered the smoking rifle with steady hands. Her heart pounded, but her aim had saved her father without taking another life. Daniel smiled with pride before turning back toward Nathaniel. The battle began. Honest sheriffs, settlers, ranchers, and families charged down the canyon from every direction. The Raven Riders fought desperately, but for the first time they faced people who were no longer afraid. Years of fear and silence disappeared beneath the sound of courage. Lucas and Samuel reached Henry and cut the ropes from his wrists. Eleanor protected the family records while Daniel's wife and son remained safely behind the line of defenders. Henry picked up a fallen rifle and stood beside Daniel. Today we finish this together. Nathaniel tried to escape through a narrow path leading toward the western cliffs. Daniel followed without hesitation. The chase carried both men across loose rocks and steep ledges until they reached the edge of the canyon. Below them, a fast river crashed against the cliffs. Nathaniel finally stopped and faced Daniel. "You think defeating me changes anything? Another man will take my place." Daniel slowly lowered his rifle. "Perhaps, but he will never control people who know the truth." Nathaniel looked behind him. Honest riders had already surrounded every escape. For the first time in many years, the preacher stood completely alone. Instead of surrendering, he stepped backward onto the loose edge of the cliff. The ground gave way beneath his feet. His desperate cry disappeared into the roaring river below. Silence returned to Iron Canyon. The Raven Riders threw down their weapons. One by one, they accepted defeat. Daniel looked toward the rising sun, knowing the long nightmare had finally ended. But inside Nathaniel's abandoned carriage, unlocked wooden chest remained unopened, waiting to reveal one last family secret. Morning sunlight slowly spread across Iron Canyon as the final echoes of battle faded into silence. The Raven Riders had surrendered. Their weapons rested in piles across the rocky ground, while honest sheriffs escorted the captured men away. Families separated for many years embraced once again. Hope had finally returned to the frontier after generations of fear. Daniel stood beside the abandoned black carriage where Nathaniel Cross had hidden his most valuable possessions. The heavy wooden chest remained locked with thick iron bands. Henry, Amelia, Samuel, Eleanor, Lucas, Daniel's wife and young son, gathered around as Henry carefully forced the lock open with his blacksmith tools. The old lid slowly lifted. Inside, they expected to find gold or stolen jewels. Instead, they found hundreds of neatly tied letters. Every envelope carried the name of a different family. Some belonged to settlers who had vanished. Others carried names Daniel recognized from towns, destroyed many years before. Eleanor gently opened the first letter. It had been written by Daniel's mother. Her words filled the silent canyon with unexpected emotion. She had secretly warned dozens of families before. Nathaniel could steal their homes. She had risked everything to save strangers, knowing she might never see her own family again. Daniel quietly wiped away tears. "All these years I believed she died without hope." Henry placed a comforting hand upon his shoulder. "She never stopped fighting." As Eleanor continued searching, she discovered one final envelope marked with Daniel's name. His hands trembled as he opened it. The letter had been written only days before his mother's death. "My beloved son, if this letter reaches you, then remember one truth. Hatred always asks for another victim. Love always asks for another chance. Do not spend your life chasing revenge. Build the peaceful home they tried to destroy. That will always be the greatest victory." Daniel folded the letter against his heart. At that very moment, his little son pointed toward the distant valley. Everyone looked. Settlers from every direction were riding toward Iron Canyon, carrying wagons, seeds, tools, and livestock. They had come not for war. They had come to rebuild together. Daniel smiled, knowing the future had finally begun. Spring returned to Cedar Ridge with gentle rain and warm sunshine, covering the valleys with fresh green grass. Wildflowers bloomed across the hills, while birds filled the peaceful mornings with joyful songs. The land that had once echoed with fear now welcomed families returning to the homes they believed were lost forever. Months passed as ranchers, settlers, and neighbors worked side by side, rebuilding barns, fences, schools, and churches. Every family carried painful memories, yet every new sunrise reminded them that hope had survived when hatred failed. Daniel Walker kept the promise written inside his mother's final letter. Instead of chasing the shadows of the past, he devoted every day to building a peaceful future. Beside him stood his wife, whose courage had never faded, and their young son, who finally laughed without fear. Amelia remained close to the family, and her friendship with Daniel slowly grew into something deeper than either of them expected. It was not a love that replaced the past, but one built upon trust, respect, and shared sacrifice. Daniel's wife encouraged them both before her peaceful passing several years later, after a long illness, asking Amelia to help protect the family she loved. Time gently healed every wounded heart. Daniel and Amelia eventually married beneath the same willow tree where fate had first brought them together. The entire valley gathered to celebrate not only their union, but the beginning of a new chapter for every family in Cedar Ridge. Henry proudly blessed their marriage, while Samuel, Eleanor, Lucas, and countless friends stood beside them as one family. The old Carter Ranch became a place where strangers always found shelter and hungry travelers never left without food. Children grew up hearing stories about courage, kindness, forgiveness, and the power of truth. The Raven Riders became nothing more than a warning from history, reminding future generations that darkness could never defeat hearts united by love. Every evening, Daniel and Amelia walked together beneath the willow tree, watching the sunset paint the sky with golden light. They knew life would always bring new storms, but they also knew they would never face them alone. And throughout Cedar Ridge, people remembered one simple truth: the greatest victories are never won by revenge. They are always built by love, kindness, and the courage to give someone a second chance. The end.